one thing Kamala Harris has always been: fearless. As a prosecutor, she put murderers and abusers behind bars. As California's Attorney General, she went after the big banks and won $20 billion for homeowners. And as Vice President, she took on the big drug companies to cap the cost of insulin for seniors. Because Kamala Harris has always known who she represents.
This campaign is about who we fight for. We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. Where every senior can retire with dignity. But Donald Trump wants to take our country backward, to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and end the Affordable Care Act. But we are not going back. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Wow, what a great commercial. I am Robert Vargas. I'm the president of Texas Stonewall, and I'm so excited to see each and every one of you with us today. We've got a great evening planned for you. Representative Venton Jones is going to be joining us, and so is Jessica González, who is a member of the Texas House of Representatives as well. We're going to hear one more commercial from Kamala Harris, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking to Representative Venton Jones about what it takes to run a true grassroots campaign and how it is that he's working hard to reach folks where he's at. We'll be right back.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. Kamala Harris prosecuted transnational gang members and got them sentenced to prison. Trump is trying to avoid being sentenced to prison. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
All right, welcome to First Tuesday Training. Representative Venton Jones, how are you doing, sir?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm loving that hat.
Thank you. It was my Chicago inspiration. I saw so many people with it. Had to get mine.
All right. Well, you are up for re-election, and so we're so thankful that you took time out of your busy schedule to be here. Say hi to folks. Tell them what you're about. Introduce yourself to the good folks at Texas Stonewall that haven't had the opportunity to meet you.
All right. Well, good evening, Texas Stonewall Democrats. My name is State Representative Venton Jones, and I have the honor and privilege of representing Texas House of Representatives for District 100, which is in the city of Dallas. And so I represent parts of Oak Cliff, West Dallas, South Dallas, East Dallas, and I'm just so honored to be able to be here and be able to represent a district that I was born and raised in, and now have the opportunity to be able to serve. Prior to being in the House of Representatives, I run a nonprofit called the Southern Black Policy and Advocacy Network, working to improve health outcomes for Black communities. And I have been involved for the last about 2 decades, really working in a lot of racial justice and LGBTQ equality spaces, both here in the state of Texas, but also in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. So just so happy to be here and continuing this work to work on behalf of our community.
You're doing some amazing things. I mean, some would say that other than being a state rep, you're already super busy. So what made you decide to jump in this world of grassroots politics?
Well, my background particularly it started addressing the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And for me, a lot of that started from the healthcare services arena, HIV testing, HIV outreach, and so many other aspects of HIV advocacy work. I think what I learned from when I first started doing a lot of that HIV work, particularly in the city of Dallas, how close the policy and the grassroots efforts were so much so connected, and the need to learn that policy extended for me, ultimately moving to Washington, D.C., and then being able to come back to work into my, into my hometown and community. And I think that, through that background of really doing a lot of that organizing work through a lot of HIV advocacy work, it really led to give me the legs I needed to be able to run a really strong campaign to be state representative, right now, and, get ready to start my second term.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. We're going to bring in Representative Jessica González to say hi. And then we're going to have a little panel discussion about grassroots organizing. So give us just a moment and we'll be right back.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool. She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the...
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really only one. Kamala.
Kamala Harris for the people. We've got another fabulous human being that's also for the people. Representative Jessica González.
Hold on. I'm having clearly some audio issues.
Well, we can hear you.
I don't think you guys can hear me. Give me just a second.
All right, Rep. Well, we can definitely hear you.
Okay, guys, hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I had just enough time to get home and throw on a hoodie and be here with you guys. So
well,
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. We were just talking to Representative Jones, and I know we're doing a little bit of a panel discussion tonight. So tell us, before the rep joins us, what made you decide to get involved in this crazy world of grassroots politics?
Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. When I had thought about running for office previously. It was kind of in the back of my head, maybe if the opportunity, were to arise. And, in my practice of law, when we were seeing, kind of the attacks on women's health care, on the LGBTQ community, on immigrants, not only, and also in the Texas House, we saw SB 4, and that was, a brutal legislative session, which was the one before the first one that I served. And then also, when we had the bathroom bill, and, and one of the things that really kind of hit home to me was, I was having, some of my clients in my law firm who are predominantly Latino and have mixed status families. And they were afraid to just live their daily lives, right? To go to the grocery store, to pick up their kids from school, to even leave their houses. And it was really heartbreaking, right? And so, I was doing it pro bono, me and my law partner, because they were, getting the power of attorneys just in case, because really folks who, come to this country, as we all know, they just want a better life for their kids, to give that, the guardianship to somebody else in the event that were to happen. And so, and I had been contemplating maybe running for city council. My city councilor was going to term out in about a year or so. And so I was kind of already had that in my head. And I really just got pissed off, right? Of just all the attacks on our community and my district in particular, just like many others in Dallas, including my colleague, Venton Jones. We have safe Democrat districts, and I did run against a Democratic incumbent because I just felt that in that environment, and it was so hostile, prior to me joining the legislature, that I just felt that I could do a better job, and that if we have districts that are safe, and we don't have to worry about getting attacked, because we know that happens all the time, right? We just saw that happen with moderate Republicans in the Texas House, that this district could afford to have somebody that was going to stand up and that was going to fight for the issues that were important to District 104. And I felt that I could be that voice. And so I was crazy enough to jump in and run against an almost 30-year incumbent.
That's amazing.
And I won. And
Awesome.
So here I am. Yeah.
I love it. We're going to continue the conversation after this quick commercial. I'm loving all these Harris videos that the campaign sent us, such powerful messages. So we're going to come back and we're going to have a grassroots discussion with both Representative Jessica González and Representative Venton Jones. We'll be right back.
In this election, we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? There are some people who think we should be a country of chaos, of fear, of hate. But us, we choose something different. We choose freedom.
Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. Yeah. Freedom, freedom, where are you? 'Cause I need freedom too.
The freedom not just to get by, but get ahead. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to make decisions about your own body. We choose a future where no child lives in poverty, where we can all afford health care, where no one is above the law. We believe in the promise of America, and we're ready to fight for it. Because when we fight, we win. So join us. Go to KamalaHarris.com and let's get to work.
I'ma keep on running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
What an inspiring message from Kamala Harris. Let's get to work. And you all have been working in the legislature and throughout the community, and I really, really appreciate that. For those of you watching at home, we just want to make sure you know that you can post your questions in the chat, and we'll share them and answer them as we go. I'd like to know from each one of you, what has been the most surprising aspect of campaigning? Why don't we start with you, Rep. Jones?
I would say what was the most surprising was how similar it was to having to build a nonprofit, meaning the need to get staff in place and the need to be able to put all those things together in a very short amount of time. And I think I had the expectation that once I won, that all these things are just going to like, boom, I got everything like planted and ready to go. But that was a process that really had to be built and thoughtful about how to be put in place, not only to serve in Austin, but also in Dallas. And so I would say one of my largest surprises was how not plug and play that process was.
How about yourself, Representative González?
I think in regards to campaigning per se, I was actually, one of the fears that I had about running for office initially was that, that my, sexual orientation would be something that would be used against me. And at that point in my life, and I know a lot of people don't know this, but it's with my family, or with my dad at least. He's always known that I was gay, right? But it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell at home. And so we just never really talked about it, right? And so for me, it was one of those things that it's like, well, I had to be, I didn't know what kind of reaction that I would get, right, from my family. Sure. And so that was really scary for me. But, when I ran, that was, it wasn't something that I necessarily ran on, right? It was like, but I also didn't hide it, right? It's like, yes, I was proud to be endorsed by Stonewall. And I, was, proudly identify as who I was, but I ran on the issues. And so I was surprised that wasn't something that came up. And I think that that's just kind of telling of the kind of district that I have, that it's gotten younger, it's gotten more progressive. And so that was really surprising for me, in regards to campaigning. But I as Venton said, as coming into the legislature, you don't get your key to your office until like, what is it, like the Saturday before opening day?
Oh my goodness.
And hire staff at all before that. And so everybody, your staff's trying to get your office set up, to welcome your guests for, opening day of session. And it's crazy. It is crazy. They definitely don't make it easy for freshmen coming in to the legislature for sure.
It's interesting. I know that's a surprising thing for people to learn, is that your staff doesn't start till like January 1st, right? Or something, or is it even if that, right?
If that, yeah.
So as we're gearing up for the election, right? It's September. I tell people, people are about to, I just had this conversation with one of my political clients. It's like people are going to start voting in just a few weeks, right? Around the 1st of October, the mail ballots go out. So what do you all think are grassroots, like our Stonewall leaders and our activists? What are the most effective ways that you all have found that is the best way to reach voters? We'll start with you, Representative González.
Knocking on doors.
Yeah.
I know that's the most, time consuming as far as like people work. But that is the most effective, right? I mean, that's how I was able to win my election. I know it is hard, but I know that it's also difficult for folks to give financially to campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, this is the best way that you can help candidates, because I mean, the thing here, and is like we've had the opportunity to potentially finish flipping these other 2 seats that we have in our Dallas delegation. But part of the problem is that these candidates just don't have enough money to have to hire folks to get boots on the ground. And so I encourage folks that you have some time to go out and help some of these candidates, because it is very difficult for them to get money.
I do agree.
Yeah,
I do agree that it's probably one of the most nerve-wracking aspects of the campaign, because you're knocking on somebody's door when you don't know what's going on in their world, right? They could be having breakfast, they could be, doing personal business, whatever, right? You just don't know.
Oh, I'm sure Venton I'm sure has stories too, but I have stories of knocking on doors.
Yeah, tell us about that, Ben. Representative Jones, sorry. I know you too much. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. I would definitely just add to, in addition to knocking on doors, anytime you can get directly in front of the people is such critical time. And one thing that our local Stonewall chapter has done here in Dallas is just using the opportunities between now and the elections to get like directly on the strip, right there in Oklahoma, Cedar Springs, and like get information like right in front of people. And so anytime that somebody that's knowledgeable about the issues that can get in front of voters and talk to them is going to be really important than anything that we can really put in front of some people digitally. So that's I would add to that. But yes, there's definitely tons of stories about knocking on doors. I think that was one of my largest fears that I had to get over, was just not being afraid to just knock on doors at any time and just like ask for that vote. And just really being that committed to making that ask, because it's sometimes I'd walk up and just like, okay, I'll come back later. But just having to kind of fight that fear, just like keep on doing it, keep on knocking.
You brought up an interesting topic, Representative Jones. What is it that you're hearing as a boots on the ground, as an elected official? What is it that your offices are hearing right now as far as issues are concerned?
Well, I think that anything that involves of making ends meet right now is what people are talking about. How to make things more affordable versus what we're seeing more expensive. Food is more expensive, gas is more expensive, childcare is more expensive. Just the ability to survive is expensive. No matter what income you make, but especially for those who have limited incomes, or even our seniors right now. So it's so important that we talk about those issues, and how do we make sure that those issues connect. I think that also what you're most recently hearing people are talking about is just the tone and the difference that is being seen in the 2 national elections. What you see kind of in Vice President Harris's campaign is a theme of joy, a theme of excitement, and something that's bringing people's passion back, compared to just this ongoing fight that we've had to be in, with the far right and some of these conversations. And so I'm so happy to hear a lot of people shift this conversation from just a battle against Donald Trump to actually being excited about what's at the top of the ticket and the other candidates that are coming through that are representing the Democratic Party. And that is a definite shift that you're seeing, and it's only intensified from the energy that people have felt from the convention in Chicago.
What would you say on that, Representative González?
I mean, I think that as Representative Jones has said, that I think after the convention that people are starting to they feel the momentum, they feel the excitement, and think that people are actually seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And so kind of just reiterating the messages that we got from the convention is like, this is not the time to sit on your hands. It's time to like go do something, right? And, I think that we keep sending that message, we keep it going, that I think we'll get there this November. But, some of the issues that, at least in District 104, are actually some of the same issues that continue, like that have continued to affect their lives. Affordable housing, always an issue, right? Property taxes. People, folks are really concerned about, again, like as everybody is, vouchers, and especially kind of just with next session, it's going to be something. And so, Venton and I are gonna. I don't even know. We don't even know what to expect, right? And so, but those are some of the things that folks continue to talk about, and I hope that we can kind of address some of those things. Actually, bread and butter issues versus just these divisive issues that the legislature has chosen to focus on in the last couple sessions.
Representative González, what would you say to our activists that are watching out there that say, "Hey, I've got friends or family that are middle of the road, right? They're not Democrats, but they're not hardcore Republicans." What would you say, given the current political climate, is good messaging to give them
for undecided voters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the Harris-Walz campaign did a really, really great job, in our convention. That, I mean, yes, we had a lot of fun, but it wasn't just, just a big party of just, and just, ultimately, voting to nominate President, Kamala Harris as our,
It was not a big party. I don't know what you're talking about. No partying on
I don't think the Republicans had as much fun as we did. I don't think they had little John come out of the audience. But I think that, Democrats did a fantastic, or at least, Kamala Harris did a fantastic job in taking some of these core issues. For example, family values, what democracy means, what being patriotic means, and defining it as a solid Democrat value, right? I mean, we hear Republicans talking about it all the time, but they don't really define it, right? It's just attacking, and I just think that was those themes that kind of resonated through the convention. I think that people should listen to that, right? It's don't listen to these divisive issues. Listen to which party is actually going to follow through and actually believes in the principles of just equity, and just what does it really mean to to protect our children, or protect what family values, or what what does it really mean to be a patriot or an American, right? And I think that pointing to those things, because you don't really hear Republicans having a platform or an agenda. Their agenda is just to attack ours. And so, and I think kind of pointing to that is like, Democrats actually, we want to do something. And so maybe just kind of pointing to some of those things, I think would potentially, right, get somebody to maybe make a decision on if they're, kind of in the middle.
No, absolutely. Republicans like to say that they're the family values, they're the people of faith and things like that. And I think Representative Jones will agree that, those are dog whistles. Those are things that they just say. But they're not necessarily, you can't point to it, right? Don't tell me you're a person of faith that represents faith, but then you've got a nominee like Donald Trump, right? Or you've got a nominee that's doing the things that he's doing to immigrants or to students. If you want to jump in here, Representative Jones, tell me what your thoughts are there.
Well, I think that in addition to what you both have said, also looking at how that trickles down to the state level. And when we had a lot of, particularly Republicans using the conversation and narrative about families and children, it was that dog whistle. It was that dog whistle that was particularly the ones that was attacking transgender youth and not allowing age-appropriate healthcare to take place. Not just what families were deciding, but literally what families were going to their doctors and working with for years and years of therapy and treatment to be able to make the best decisions that were needed, for their families. And so I think that in addition, as we continue to look up the ticket, what we continue to see at the White House in the national discourse, that we continue to pay attention to also how does that play across in our state politics right now, and how we had to fight off over 144 bad LGBTQ bills to try to advance, our community. So in addition to what we're seeing and what we're fighting for at the national level, we have to be just as diligent at the state level, because many have campaigned on this same family platform. And if you look at that platform, it's nothing but attacks to LGBTQ people, to young people, and other people that we care deeply about.
No, absolutely. You know, we got a question from Nidia Reveles, who I'm very, very excited is watching. Nidia is the president of Stonewall Democrats in El Paso, and they just became an official charter with Texas Stonewall Democrats. So
Congratulations.
props to them. But she had a good question. She said, speaking of dog whistles, what can we expect for trans Texans and the people who love them? She's dealing with the upcoming legislature. Do you want to jump in there, Representative González?
We've already, when we were, Representative Jones, we were already dealing with, some attacks on our trans community while we were at the DNC, because Paxton is just relentless, right?
Isn't he though?
It's relentless on villainizing, the transgender community to make them feel like they're the other. And so, unfortunately, I think that if we are able even to, and there is a possibility of us flipping several seats here in Texas. I think that'll change the tone of the legislature, even if it's a slight, Democratic gain within the House. And there are several seats that, if these candidates get the money that they need, they get, they knock on enough doors, we can take those. Because I saw what happened when Democrats flipped 12 seats right before I joined the legislature. My first session was a hell of a lot more calm than it has been the two after that, because of that, right? And so, if Democrats can make additional gains, I think that will change a little bit of kind of the tone.
Sure.
I think it's also going to depend on who we ultimately end up electing as our next speaker. We're gonna, that's kind of up in the air with all that whole thing that happened in the Republican primary recently. And so, but unfortunately, we're always on the menu, and that's always going to be the case. And so, folks like Venton and I, will be there at the front line on to fighting for all of our communities, right? And so. It's hard to say, but we see kind of these these things. I mean, Venton and I were just talking the other day. We saw that Matt Shaheen is now threatening to defund State Fair Park, which is in Venton's district, because they had a RuPaul live show there, right? And he's saying that and so we're gonna continue seeing these attacks, but I hope that folks on that are joining us today know that you have some folks that are fighting, and will continue to fight.
Do you want to add to that, Representative Jones?
Yes, I definitely agree with everything Representative González said. I also think that it's going to be a fight like hell, though, and I think we really have to be ready for that in a way that understands that one trip to the Capitol is not going to be enough. For everybody that is really engaged in this conversation and really removes any kind of political momentum as far as people funding or whatever, needs to be able to keep that drumbeat coming to the Capitol, because what was something that was so important last year was that advocates kept coming back to the Capitol. No matter how many times the bill was killed, people kept on coming back. And that's exactly what we're going to have to be prepared to do, because even with what we saw last session or even the session before, that has become that drumbeat of attacking LGBTQ communities, particularly through the trans community, if we're going to be honest, is the strategy. And we have to make sure that as LGBTQ people, we're standing up for our trans brothers and sisters, and we're not letting this narrative come in and divide us on our issues. Because we have to stay connected, because what will happen to one community can happen to another community. And also what's also important to this is to really be able to understand those community LGBTQ people who are at the intersection of multiple communities, Black LGBTQ people, Latino LGBTQ people, and how that even intensifies the issues. Because one thing that I did not mention about my experience before running for office, and what really motivated me to come into this seat is that during COVID, I had to, on one channel in one situation, watch what was happening to George Floyd and,
Mm,
police violence and all that. But then on the other side, see all of this happen, violence happening to Black trans women, not even a mile away from the house that I live in right now.
mm,
And so just the combination of that is overwhelming, especially when you look at that in the state legislative, context, when you're not just seeing LGBTQ people under attack, you're seeing Latino people under attack with these crazy border bills. You're seeing Black communities under attack, what's happening with DEI and in other communities that's even wrapped up into the whole DEI conversation, which impacts each and every one of us. So there's so many not conflicting, there's so many, overlapping issues that I hope that as people educate, folks about, what's happening in their local communities, what they're seeing, federally, that we also, make sure we do the needed work to understand what's happening at the state level, because we need to be vigilant right now, because so many of our rights that we thought were sacred and, sewn in the law are very much so under attack right now. And that centers on, our trans brothers and sisters right now. Even what we're seeing right here and right now, and every day with, with IDs and birth certificates and all that other crap that we're seeing that's being challenged, here in Illinois State.
Representative González, you brought up a good point. We always talk about Democrats being a little disorganized and we fight amongst ourselves, but man, those primary battles on the Republican side were worse than anything I've ever seen Democrats do. And so we are going to see a fight with the speaker. If you will educate us a little bit, what does that mean, right? So the governor ran someone against the now outgoing speaker. I believe he lost his election, if I'm not mistaken. And now there's going to be a race.
No, our current speaker got reelected.
He did get reelected. Okay, but there's going to be a fight to determine who becomes the next speaker, right?
Absolutely. Yes. So just to try to condense it, it was claimed to have been, attacking, the moderate Republicans, rural Republicans, right, who don't have they don't have these private schools within their district, right, that's going to benefit folks in their district. And so, with having a voucher program within the state, they know the detriment that would bring to the state. And so that's how we were able to defeat, vouchers, this previous session. And so the governor decided to go after these folks. Paxson also went after some folks because of the impeachment. And so they went after their own. And you know what? Honestly, if Republicans are infighting and they're spending money within, other Republican races, that means they're not spending it in Democrat races to defeat our Democrats, right? And so that to me is always a great thing.
Sure.
But unfortunately, they were able to defeat a large majority of those, moderate rural Republicans that were under attack. And so that kind of dwindles down that margin that we had when we defeated vouchers. They're not at a point right now where I think we're about a couple votes, where we are with vouchers, but one of those folks that was attacked was our current speaker, right? He was able to win his runoff in the primary, but with all the infighting within this new crop of Republicans, which are very, very far right. I mean, these are like the very true believers, the ones that are going to be attacking our community. There's a whole bunch of them that are going to be coming in. And so they're in, kind of at ends with, kind of current leadership. And so that kind of puts it up in the air, right? Because they're going to need Democrats. They're going to need Democrats. Whoever's going to be elected as the next Speaker of the House, they are going to need Democrat votes, right? And it's going to be important for us to stick together to make sure that we're getting something out of it, right? That in our issues is definitely one that we need to make sure that is going to be protected, right? Otherwise, we can have the same situation that happened in Congress. We just want to elect the speaker. Because they can't. I'm like, don't get it twisted. They need us, right? And so we got to get some of those concessions, prior to that happening. And so that's going to be very important because the speaker determines what legislation comes to the floor.
All right. Well, that's really interesting. And I know that fight is for after the election, right? First, we got to get through this one. So having said that, Representative Jones, what would you like our activists, those LGBT folks that are out in rural Texas and in different areas, to know as we head into the election, right? What kind of words of encouragement do you have for them to keep them motivated? I know we have a lot of areas and a lot of counties. I said this in our last call. I've had a county judge once tell me, oh, I don't have any LGBTQ folks in my county. I'm like, dude, yes, you do. With all due respect, you sure do. And so, this platform is a voice for those voiceless. And so I'd love for both of you, and we'll start with Representative Jones, to give some encouraging words to our folks before you guys head out for the night.
Well, I think that when you think about what's needed right now, one of the most important words of encouragement that I would say is that keep going. The work is important, and these elections, when we talk about the work that's needed to flip a lot of these seats, are not going to happen in one session. It's the work that continues to push the needle forward. That's going to move us, closer and closer, especially as we get closer to redistricting. And we know that more and more Democrats are moving into more rural spaces. We know that the tone of Republican politics is turning a lot of Republicans off. And there needs to be, people on the ground that really have the message that what the Democratic Party is working on middle class families, working to speak for all communities, not just the wealthy, working to make sure that we have a Texan that's big enough for all of us. And so I would just say continue that work of changing those hearts and minds. Because it's going to take exactly those individuals to be able to do that, because any campaign could come in and go out as quick as they came, in addition to those resources. But the people that folks are going to trust, the people that folks are going to go back to each and every one of those, times when it's time to vote, are going to be those very individuals that are fighting to hold on right now, when it seems impossible to win, some of these races. But we know that it's possible, and hopefully we can continue to have platforms like this that continue to keep all of us motivated in Texas as we ultimately do what's needed to finally turn the state blue again.
Very good. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your leadership in the House and just in the community. We really, really appreciate everything you're doing for us. Representative González.
I go back to the message that, former First Lady Michelle Obama said at the convention, that, it is not the time to sit on your hands and ask for a campaign to reach out and ask you to help. Right. I mean, this is the fight of, the fight of our lives. Right. I mean, we have so many issues. I mean, including our community, women's healthcare. I mean, everything's up for grabs. If Trump wins, which, I'm like doing the sign of the cross. Right. But because I believe that he won't, because I think that Democrats right now have a lot of momentum. I think that I know that folks don't have the ability to, give large donations, but even those small donations, when you can, those go a long way. I mean, they went a long way for me in my election. Also, just knocking on doors, right? Even if it makes us uncomfortable, right, to do that. We have to do something. We all have a responsibility to make sure that Texas doesn't continue to go backwards. And for example, I mean, I hate, and I think Venton will probably disagree because he's better at this than I am. But I hate making fundraising phone calls. It is like pulling teeth. But I've committed, and even more so after coming back from DNC, to raise money to invest with my limited campaign funds, to invest back into the district, to make sure that we're turning out voters, to make sure that even if it's right, we call in, can get folks out, right? But the more folks that we register, the more folks that we get to turn out to vote, that is going to have a huge effect down ballot. And if we continue doing that, then I think it'll have a long-term effect. But we can't give up just because it's been a red state for almost decades.
Yeah.
We can't give up, because I think they've gone too far this time, and people know that. They know that they've gone too far.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. We really appreciate it. For those of you watching at home, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat and we'll send them to both of the representatives so they can share with us. We're going to be right back with Texas Democratic Party political director, Ryan Garcia. We're going to deep dive a little bit more into grassroots organizing. So stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. Kamala Harris prosecuted transnational gang members and got them sentenced to prison. Trump is trying to avoid being sentenced to prison. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
This is a country that has been built by immigrants that brought their unique cultures and faith to America. Together, that common bond is uniting closer, more than ever because of the jeopardy that our democracy is falling into. We will be heard, loud and in unison, as we use our power to vote blue as Democrats. United we stand, with a cause that resonates from us all the way to families at home. As Democrats, our voice to big government is our vote. Our message to Washington is simple: hate will never prevail. When we vote, we overcome. When Democrats vote, Democrats win.
Hello, Texas Stonewall. We're back with Ryan Garcia. That video is a little homage to both our homes, Bexar County, and a little throwback to Biden Harris. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
I'm good, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. Man, how are you settling in? You've now been at the Texas Democratic Party for how long?
It'll be 3 years in January, and it's flown by. But
3 years. You must have grown roots by now. Jeez.
It has been a journey, but I'm just so thankful for all of the relationships that I've been able to build with Texas Democrats across the state, and just to be able to highlight and showcase and just see firsthand the work that everybody is doing across our great state to advance our cause. I feel really privileged to be just someone who can be supportive of all those efforts.
No, it's excellent, and we certainly appreciate the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about your role. You're the political director. What does that mean?
Well, I get to basically just support and advise all the different constituencies of our party, whether that's elected officials, like the great history-making legislators we just got to hear from, candidates that step up to the plate to run. And us Texas Democrats know that running as a Democrat in Texas is not always the easiest mission. It's not always the easiest thing to step up for, and just to be able to work with those candidates is a blessing in itself. And of course, we've got 254 counties in the great state of Texas, which is by far the largest number of counties of any state in the country. And I get to work with the county chairs that help lead the party in their respective corners of the state. And of course, all the thousands of precinct chairs and just grassroots activists and everyone in between that makes up our big tent here in Texas.
We're definitely a big tent in the Texas Democratic Party. You and I both cut our teeth, as we like to say, in grassroots politics. I know you and I have both worked very underfunded races, but not outworked, as I like to say. And we heard from both Representative Jones and Representative González about the most effective way to get out the vote, right? The most effective way to really, really flip a seat, or in some cases maintain a seat, is through knocking on doors. Are they crazy? Are we crazy to think that? What have you seen through your work now, not just as a local activist and a local leader, but now working across the state with those 254 counties?
Yeah, working underfunded underdog races in San Antonio happens to be really great training. Director, of the state party. Obviously, it's no secret to any of us, and even for the shoulders of those giants that came before us and who really have set the foundation for us over the past 30 years. It's no secret to any of us that working to close the gap in our state is no easy task.
Sure.
And it's not for the faint of heart. But I think we ought to remind ourselves that over the past, roughly 15 years, we have consistently closed the gap cycle to cycle, from presidential election to presidential election, from senatorial election to senatorial election, and from gubernatorial election to gubernatorial election. We have consistently closed the gap and thinned those margins. And we've done so without, the level of national investment that a lot of the other quote unquote battleground states enjoy, and the national attention that they enjoy. And I'm talking about states like Georgia, states like Florida. Those states have enjoyed lots of national attention and investment. And I hope that our friends in those states won't take offense to me saying that we've been able to do a lot of the work to close that gap without necessarily that support or attention all of the time. And that's changing.
Sure.
We right now are the sort of the epicenter for the largest, or rather the most competitive Senate seat in the country. And of course, we're talking about Colin Allred and Ted Cruz. And we have a great partner in that Senate candidate. We have a great campaign that's being run there. And we have every reason to believe and be hopeful that we're going to close that gap even tighter, and dare I say, maybe even finally flip this state or get really, really close. And it's those incremental changes over time that make the difference. And block walking, to your point, and that direct voter contact is absolutely a part of that equation. And I think sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking that block walking maybe doesn't really make a difference, or maybe it only makes a difference in those really local, maybe city council, municipal, county office elections. But as I'm sure the folks that we just heard from, Representative González and Representative Jones, would agree with, block walking is absolutely the difference in even those state legislative races, and even in, the Senate race and the presidential race.
Sure.
I would never, ever discount how powerful the ability to build those face-to-face connections with voters is in our ability to, again, change the makeup of this state, and with it, the landscape of American politics for generations to come. We have 40 electoral votes in our state, and that comes with all of the hope and responsibility that having such a big impact on our national politics can mean. And when Texas finally flips, and when we send 40 electors to vote for the Democratic nominee for president, that is truly going to change the landscape of American politics for generations. And I don't think any of us should take that lightly. And it should be in the back of our head every time we're making a phone call or sending a text or talking to our tias or our primos about the upcoming election, and going up to the doors of our neighbors and telling them why this election in particular is so important.
We talk about watching incremental change, right? We've talked about the fact that throughout my political life, and I know in your political life, we've worked in races that are somewhat underfunded, right? And we've been able to create change through that direct voter contact and through knocking on doors. I believe the biggest place that we see that, in my opinion, is in our gubernatorial race. We've had exciting candidates run for governor, and then we've had some not so exciting candidates run for governor that still continue to move the needle and close the gap more and more. We talk about Texas being not necessarily a red state or a blue state, but being a non-voter state because we don't pull our own people out to vote. I know that every election cycle I experience this, and I'm sure you have as well, where it's like, hey, you're talking to your friends like, hey, I wanted to vote for your candidate. When is the election? You're like, dude, early voting is going on now, right? How is it that the state party is working with candidates? Or how would you, as a state party leader, encourage folks to get their people out to the polls?
Well, right now, a lot of the folks watching may be familiar with Texas Offense, which is just the latest iteration of our coordinated campaign statewide. And we're working very closely with the Color All Red campaign and county parties to do just that. And, you know, there is no one silver bullet to flipping our state, right? I think sometimes we want to reach for just the one, you know, golden answer.
The thing that's going to work, Ryan.
If we do this one thing, then we'll be successful. And I think actually what is the case is that it takes a lot of different strategies. And one of those strategies is persuading voters, those tried and true people that we know are going to come out. I've spoken a lot with different folks in our party across the state over the past year about how the dynamics at play, not only nationally, where we have obviously a now convicted former president who is running again to hold that office. And we have seen tried and true conservative voters who even voted for Donald Trump twice, who said this year, I can't do it. I'm not going to come back out and vote for Donald Trump. Some of them voted for Nikki Haley or decided to just not vote in their primary at all, right? All of that was happening while within our own state, there were a lot of dynamics at play that I think create opportunities for us as a party. I'm speaking, of course, about the impeachment vote against Ken Paxton, where we saw Republicans sort of split. There was a group of Republicans who were totally okay voting to condone corruption. And there was another group of Republicans who said that is a bridge too far, right?
Sure.
That, of course, happened nearly at the same time as we saw the public school fight, or the private school voucher fight that was spearheaded by Greg Abbott. And again, we saw some Republicans totally fine to strip schools and school districts of that funding in favor of being able to send generally well-privileged, well-off kids to these really expensive private schools, typically, you know, religious schools. And again, there were some Republicans who said that's a bridge too far, who understood the value and the importance of public schools, not only as employers in their communities, but also as just fundamental pieces of the community. And so those two things, again, happening against the national backdrop, I think really create an opportunity for us to engage, quote unquote, more moderate voters. And I think we forget sometimes a lot of the folks who vote in elections only vote every 4 Novembers, only when there is a president on the ticket. And I think sometimes we take for granted that everyone who votes in those elections thinks about politics just the way that you and I do, just the way that our friends who attend conventions with us or Democratic Club meetings or our county party CEC meetings, right? I think we forget sometimes we are a very unique, dare I say, niche group of people, right? And so are the folks who vote generally in Democratic primaries. And not everybody thinks about politics that way. Not everybody understands what terms like progressive or conservative mean necessarily. And so I think we do ourselves a great service when we recognize part of the way that we are going to be successful in this state is messaging to those people and persuading those. And every vote that we can flip is not only a vote for us, but also a vote we're taking away from the other side. So it's almost, you know, two in the hat that we get to bag when we flip votes and we persuade people. And of course, that is not to take away from the importance of turning out our base. We've got to pay attention to those tried and true Democrats who sometimes don't always come out. And Ms. Martinez isn't always going to remember what day the election is, right? But we know if she comes out, she's going to vote for the Democrats that are on her ballot. And that's all to say, there are more than one way that we're going to have to engage in to win power in our state. And that is not only persuading voters, but also making sure that we're paying attention to our base, that we're not ignoring them, and that they're being engaged and reminded about how important this election is.
So shout out to Jessica Anaker. She's the chair of the Disability Caucus. She brought up a good point. She says, as we know, a lot of this state is rural. 100%. I 100% agree that door knocking is key, but some doors are miles apart. What would be the best way to do that grassroots organizing?
Well, it is absolutely true that canvassing door to door in rural areas where, like Jessica said, and shout out to Jessica, who helps to lead our Disability Caucus and does so much great work advocating for our disabled community. It is absolutely a different sort of challenge to knock in rural areas where doors are farther apart, houses are a little bit farther from the street. Folks are not as used to having just kind of random people knocking on their door as they may.
And don't just show up to people's ranches. Like, don't open the gate and don't walk down the door.
That's right. And there is a different approach for sure. And I think that there are things that we can do to make that engagement a little bit more productive. And some of that looks like maybe sending those automated phone calls and saying, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood on this day. So that way people are expecting you, and everyone who's on your universe list gets maybe a call or a text and says, hey, we're going to come by and we're so excited to talk to you about this election. And that's a good way to sort of prime people. But make no mistake, there are lots of rural communities across this country. And I'm thinking about places like Iowa, places like Montana, places like the Dakotas, where door knocking is a tried and true way to connect with voters, just like it is in Texas, right? And so I don't subscribe to the idea that we should forego that direct voter contact at the door in rural areas just because they're farther apart. And absolutely, it is more of a challenge. But I'll say this, I think that in some ways, those conversations, when you have them at the door, are, dare I say again, a little more productive, and you get a little bit more juice out of those conversations than you may even in urban areas, right? Rural communities tend to be tighter knit. And when people go to town or they go to the store or they go to the voting place, a lot of times they do that as a family because there's not a car for everyone who lives in the household. And because going again to town and going shopping are things that the whole family gets involved in. And in urban areas, we talk a lot about, hey, well, if I've got your vote, you know, I also see Jose on here and I see John here. Make sure you tell them too, right? You can be sure that when you have a conversation in a rural household, everyone in that house is going to hear about what you talked about. And if one person's going to go to town to vote, everybody in that house is going to go vote. And so I just say that to underline, it's a different sort of a challenge, but you get a different sort of productivity out of those conversations when you have them than even you might expect in urban areas.
You know, and I will jump in on this one as well, Jessica. You know, when I was running for president of Texas Stonewall, I took a hands-on approach and I traveled all over the state and whatnot, and that was fun. But what I learned was that in places like Uvalde, which is a primarily rural community, right, small farm town here in West Texas. Well, I guess it would be West Texas, Southwest Texas. What I found was that getting together with the county chair and the electeds and having a cafecito, in our case, we did a happy hour because it was late in the day. And the county chair at the time said, hey, Chairman Carlos said, hey, I don't know that we're going to get a lot of people, but we used Van. So we downloaded a Van list and we sent a text message to the people that consistently vote Democrat or were light Democrats. We pulled the list, sent them a text saying, hey, we're having a happy hour at Lunkers, you know, on Wednesday from, 5 to 8, right? Come join us, come join fellow Democrats. And, honestly, Carlos thought the chairman thought we were going to get about, 10, 20 people. And we ended up with like close to 75 folks, and we're able to recruit at least 2 or 3 young ladies to become precinct chairs throughout that area. And that was because in areas that are more rural, maybe they don't have all the political engagement. And, in San Antonio and in some of these areas, it's not weird to have 2 or 3 political events a week, every single week leading up to the election. But in places like Uvalde or Valverde or some of these smaller counties, if you send out a message and say we're going to do a happy hour, people will show up. Even our one of my favorite chairwomen, I have to say one of, I don't want to get in trouble, Julie Hilbert. She would get together, and she still does get together, and the county party provides tacos. They have a relationship with a restaurant and they provide tacos, and they send out messages to say, hey, come have a taco and meet your city council member or whatnot. So while it is harder to knock on the doors in the rural areas, I don't think that people in rural areas aren't engaged. And I don't think that they're in a position where they want to be engaged. If nothing else, I think they're more appreciative when folks show up to their county. When you bring in a judge from the Court of Appeals or a statewide candidate or one of their justice of the peace gets together and says, hey, I want to meet with voters. I think working with the county chairs and the local electeds to help get that word out is very helpful. I will say that Texas Stonewall does a lot of work with our local chapters. We are now providing and helping with van data for our chapters and for the candidates that we're supporting. So please reach out to us. If you're not in an area that has a local chapter, you can reach out to myself, or you can email info@texasstonewall.com, and we'll help collaborate and set up an event together with you. So
if I can just make a quick plug there, Robert, we work very closely and have a great relationship with the Texas Democratic Association of County Chairs.
Awesome.
And they do great work. Obviously, all of those folks have to pick up a lot of the slack in their communities, and there's not a lot of help all the time in these rural counties. And so I just have so much respect for the folks that step up to be county chairs in our rural counties. It's lonely going out there sometimes, and these people step up knowing what the challenges are because they care and they understand the importance, just like we do, of rural Texas in this equation of, again, flipping our state. And so I just want to make a plug for them. We work with them very closely to recruit a lot of county chairs in places that haven't had one in a while. And we look forward to continuing that work, and would be happy to connect them with Stonewall. And I know that you're planning to work with them also. But I just would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Kay Parr, who's the president, and all the other county chairs.
Kay Parr, the fabulous lady. Definitely keeps my heels to the fire when need be.
Absolutely.
Ryan, what do you want activists to know as they're gearing up, right? What are some of the areas that you all are focused on? I know you have some hot button races that the state party is really targeting. What do you want our activists to know about those areas and how they can get involved in those?
Well, last year, the chairman of the party, Chairman Gilberto Hinojosa, appointed a targeting and planning committee after the end of last cycle.
Okay.
And that was really, an effort that was born out of the recognition that we have a big state and there are a lot of places that we can be pulling our resources. But the shotgun approach and just sort of spreading it out wide and thin is not always the most effective. And that we needed to be a little bit more focused and targeted about the counties and the districts where we can really move the needle and actually really laser focus our efforts in places that are going to help us, again, flip power in the state Senate, in the state House, etc. And so a lot of the districts that we identified are those that I'm sure some of the people watching will be familiar with. We have a great candidate in Christian Carranza, who's running in District 118 in San Antonio. Also, Laurel Swift, who's running in HD 121 in San Antonio. And there's many others. HD 37, we have Jonathan Gracia, who's running against Jenny Lopez, and an opportunity to flip that seat. And we also have HD 80. Tracy King is retiring from the legislature, and so Cecilia Castellano is our candidate there. And we also have races in the DFW area. We have Avery Bishop, who's running against Angie Chen Button. And I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention our congressional race, Texas 15, with Michelle Vallejo, who is running again to flip that seat back. and take back that mantle of Democratic power in South Texas. And there's many others. And I'll send out something to you, Robert, that has a list of those races. So when folks are thinking about where can they give their time or their money in places where it's going to make the most difference, those are the races that I would absolutely put forth. And of course, I've got to mention HD 70, Representative Mahela Plessa, who flipped that seat last time and is now in a race to hold on to that. That was the first time that a Democrat had won in Collin County in 30 years. And so that is a seat that we've got to hold on to. And there's many others. And I'll make one more plug for 2 races in Bell County that we have. We have candidates in Dodd Richardson and Jennifer Lee that are running very strong races, respectively, in Bell County. And even Elizabeth Ginsburg, who ran last time, is now running again. And we have Ms. Burkholz, who's running in Williamson County, which some of you may be familiar was once a Republican stronghold. And we began to flip with the help of people like John Busey and James Tallarico. We have a great chair there in Kim Gilby. And so, again, all of those races are targets, but I point out the latter just to showcase places that we have done concentrated, targeted work and begun to turn them into Democratic strongholds, when only 2 or 3 cycles ago, those were well-known Republican places of power. And again, to our conversation about incremental change, doing the work little by little, each cycle is really making a difference. And it's hard to see sometimes when you don't get that immediate gratification of the win, but the work matters that you do every cycle, and the work of the folks who we're building on matters too.
No, absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for sharing the wealth of knowledge that you bring to the table. I know you and I have worked together on projects in the past, and I always say that if I was running for office, you'd be the guy that I'd be dragging to the race with me, whether you liked it or not. And so I certainly respect the knowledge base you bring, and I know you're doing great work at the state party, and I appreciate that. Do you have any closing words before you head out?
Well, I want to thank everybody who's taken the time out of their busy schedules to join us tonight. And I hope that you'll recognize me for just a brief point of personal privilege. I want to extend to you, the Texas Stonewall Democrats, just immense gratitude and congratulations on behalf of Texas Democrats everywhere for all the great work that you all have already done in just the 2 short months into your term. I understand we have a new regional chapter in El Paso. Your executive board has just voted to institute a grant program that's going to provide financial resources to local Stonewall chapters to further the work that they're doing on the ground. And I'm just so grateful for everything that you're doing, not only for the LGBTQ plus community that we all belong to, but also for our party. We stand on the shoulders of giants like trailblazers. I'm talking, of course, about Representative Glenn Maxey, who's the first openly gay legislator in Texas, the late Dan Graney, who co-founded the Stonewall chapter in our hometown of San Antonio and was also a former president of Stonewall, the Texas caucus statewide. And of course, the history-making legislators that we just heard from, Representative Jessica González is the first.
Isn't it amazing that we're like able to just have conversations about politics with LGBT leaders just throughout the state? It's so
at a time that wasn't always happening. And I've heard you tell a story when, folks like us weren't even invited to the table, right? Jessica González was the first openly gay Latina elected to the ledge. Representative Venton Jones joins Representative Jolanda Jones and Christian Manuel as the first openly gay Black legislators in Texas. And so I'm just so proud of the way that you've carried the torch, you and your board, and have hit the ground running. So I thank you all and congratulate you. And I'm looking forward to see all the other great things that you all are going to do over the next 2 years to advance not only, again, the cause of our community, but also of our party.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing you in Austin this coming weekend for our state Democratic executive meeting, as well as our Jordan Johnson dinner. You have a good night, buddy.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
In this election, we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? There are some people who think we should be a country of chaos, of fear, of hate. But us, we choose something different. We choose freedom.
Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. Yeah. Freedom, freedom, where are you? 'Cause I need freedom too.
The freedom not just to get by, but get ahead. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to make decisions about your own body. We choose a future where no child lives in poverty, where we can all afford health care, where no one is above the law. We believe in the promise of America, and we're ready to fight for it. Because when we fight, we win. So join us. Go to KamalaHarris.com and let's get to work.
I'ma keep on running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
You heard it. Let's get to work. We've got a lot of work to do over the next coming days. Listen, people start voting as early as October 1st in the mail ballots. So we need you all to step up, go knock on some doors, grab a clipboard. And if you don't have a candidate in your area to support, but you still want to help candidates at the national level like Kamala Harris and other folks, let us know, and we're happy to provide you with all the support and resources you need. As Ryan was mentioning, we've got a couple of exciting things that are going on with Texas Stonewall Democrats. Number one, we have opened a grant program for our local chapters. So if you're a local Texas Stonewall chapter, you can apply for a $1,000 grant that'll go towards GOTV efforts, whether it's hosting an event, block walking, or any type of event that will really help us get voters out. We'd love to have you let us know about it. Apply for the grant. You can go to texasstonewall.com/GOTV grant and apply, and you'll be hearing from us within as soon as possible, within a couple of days. And so thank you all so much for being here. I certainly am appreciative of my buddy Ryan Garcia, the political director of the state party, as well as State Representative Venton Jones and State Representative Jessica González for being here tonight. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next month for First Tuesday training. Y'all take care and have a good night.